sample input from a school data dump. So what we have here is we have a sample CSV for SchoolCollabo. You can do this in Microsoft Excel, but today I'm going to do that in OpenOffice. You want to open that up. It's a CSV file. And as you can see, we have a sample record here that shows us our data. The most common thing we see with school data that comes across is here in this parent-guardian column. As you can see, the parents first, the first parent and the second parents are combined in a single field. And for SchoolCollabo, we need that to be broken out into a parent 1 first name and last name, separate columns, and parent 2 first name and last name in separate columns. So I'm going to show you how to do that. Before we get started, I want to do a quick cleanup because as you can see, the parent and guardian names are in all caps, and we want to get that to be first initial in cap and then the remaining in lowercase. So I'm going to show you a cool function in Excel here that's called proper that will take that information and make it into the right case. So as you can see, the proper function makes that into the right case, and we're going to copy that all the way across for our data. Now if you start looking at our data, you notice that the values that are being shown is actually the proper function, and that's going to mess with our information. So what we want to do is we want to copy that and we want to paste it back as text so that we actually are copying, importing the actual data into SchoolCollabo and not the function itself. So this is as simple as selecting the entire data that was selected. So we'll do edit, copy, and then we just want to do edit, paste special, and paste it. Make sure that paste as text is selected. Once you do that, you can see now the column actually has all the names, and that's the format we want. We will take this information here and put it into this column, because that's our column name, and then we can delete our original column D. So now we're ready to parse out this information because it's in the right format. So to do that, I'm going to insert a column right before column E, and that column is now, we're going to filter column D, parse it, and do a text column here on the data, and we're going to make the delimiter other and make that ampersand, which is what we typically see in this data set. Once we do that, you can see that that information pushes the second parent or part of the parent name into here, and we're going to say call this parent guardian 2, and just for our purposes we'll name this parent guardian 1. So now we have at least both parents. In the cases that we have both parents broken out, we also have some cases where we only have the parent first name and we don't have their last name shown in the parent guardian 1. So we're going to have to go through and fix some of that information. I'm going to show you how to do that here now. So let's start working on with parent guardian 1. We're going to go here and we're going to create some columns. For our purposes, we're going to create 3 sets of columns because we have some names that may have middle initials, and we just want to make sure that we do not overwrite any data. So we'll click on column D, and we want to go back to data, text to column, and this time we want our delimiter to be space. So as you can see, we're going to create 2 columns. We may have some that spill over, but I have a third just in case. The key thing here is we do not want to have any data that's overwritten. So we'll go ahead and hit OK, and we do not get any messages, any data is overwritten, so this column G should be empty, and we'll verify that. But now what we have is, this is our parent 1 first name, and this is our parent 1 last name. So at this point, we feel very confident that this parent 1 first name is accurate. But now, as you can see, some of the parent 1 last name is blank, and we're going to have to fix some of that. Some of it even has middle initial. So I'm going to show you here how you can quickly do that in Excel. What you want to do is you want to click on column E that has the last name, and then you want to go data, and this time we're going to do a filter. and we're going to do a standard filter based on the condition that the value is empty. So these are all the rows that are empty. And once we get that information, we can see all the rows that are empty, and we can actually just do a formula where we say this is equal to the student's last name. So that will go through, and we will bring this down here and copy it for all. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to copy this information all the way down because it has a formula in there. And we actually want to copy the actual text and just make sure that the formula is not what's still in the cell, because that can get imported in our data upload. So we'll go through and we'll copy that. We'll do edit, copy, and then we'll do edit, paste special, and we want to make sure we paste it as text, and we'll hit OK. So now the formula is not there, and we actually have the text, and we can go through on this column and remove the filter that we had. So after we do this, what we have in here is we have some records that have middle initials, which we don't really, or we're not really concerned about, and then we have this column here in which some data went in, and this is really going to have things as last names that got pushed out because of middle initials, or you know, a junior or senior on a last name. So we want to capture that information and bring it over into column E. The best way to do that is to then put another filter here, and the filter on this one is going to be a little bit different. It's going to be a standard filter, but in this case we are interested in the records that are not empty. So when we look at that, you can see these are the information where these are the records that had a middle initial, which we don't care about, but the last name got pushed into another field. So these, we're going to actually fill these out manually and bring these over. Junior, we want to bring that here and put that on the record. So we'll do that. This is the middle initial. And in here, we see something interesting. We see Kevin, and then we see Ann, and then we see Cynthia. So this record is actually a little bit different. This record got pushed because it didn't have an ampersand, and it had an and instead. So this record, Cynthia Castillo, is actually another parent. So this information actually should go into this parent guardian 2, which we'll copy here. And we'll put Cynthia on the name, and this information will go away here, and here we'll put Costello. So as you can see, some information we may have to update like that, but because of some of our cleanup earlier, it's not as much. So we'll continue to copy the last name to replace here, and I'm showing a copy and paste, but you can simply drag it, and that will copy it. You can drag this here, and that will copy it, but this is another one. So we see Dawn, Dennison Dawn. So this is another one where this should have been placed in this column. Dawn is a second parent's first name, and we want to put that in here so that information is captured properly. And the ampersand goes away, and the last name is actually Overshow. So in here, if we come a copy over here, we go down, these go down to all these records, our last name, and actually we don't want to do that. Just trying to be quick, so we're going to have to just copy this over like so, one at a time. So bear with me here as I go through, and just want to show you guys this because this can happen from time, and I think it's a good example and a good thing to see if this happens with your data upload. So this is another one with Escobar. We just have a middle initial, and we'll replace that, and this is a junior. So we'll go ahead and put that in here, and this record can stay. almost done here. We bring this over. We bring this one over. This is another one. So this one is a little bit different. This is J.R. Driscoll. So this one has a middle initial and it also has a last. And then that's the second parent. So this is a good example where it's a good thing we had this third column because this could have overwritten our data. And we'll bring this over. And then we will put the senior right there. So that's a great example. And that's why we put the 3 columns, because you could have data that span over 3 columns when doing the second data format. Here goes another and, so we know that the last name is Decker. And then this is actually Maury Decker, which is the second column. So we come here, this is a junior. And then this information gets carried over here. So here was another one, again, where we have the first and last name, but we have an and a C. So this piece right here actually is not needed. It's like, it's the and, so it was an ampersand. So this C actually is part of the second parent, and we're just going to go with C for now, as that's the data that was given to us. So now we've kind of taken care of all of these second columns, and what we can do is come back here and remove this filter, like so. And now we feel confident that we've captured the parent's first name and last name. Like I mentioned, this column had last name that was pushed, so we no longer need that. We can remove it. And this column had some extra data that was pushed, which we no longer need, and we can remove it. So that takes care of the first parent, and now we can move on to the second parent. So we're going to do something similar again. We're going to create space in here, and in this case we are going to create just 2 columns, and this is just, as I mentioned before, extra precaution in case we have middle initials that may push out into 2 rows, and we want to make sure we don't overwrite any of our data. So in here we'll go back to data, and we will go to text to columns, and we want to split this information delimited by space. So that's going to go through and have all of our information. And as you can see, we actually have a third column. So this is interesting. I wanted to show that. So that means we're going to have some data that may get overwritten. If you hit OK, this is something that, as you can see, it overwritten some of our data. So we want to undo that. And we can just come in here and we can undo what we just did. And let's go ahead and add a third column. And that's the best practice. So I wanted to show you guys that just so that this happens. If you do mess your data up and you see it's going to go in a third column, you can undo it. So we'll go back in here and we'll click this column again. And we will do the same text to column. And instead of tabs, we're going to do space. You can always check in here to see how many columns your data is going to take up. If it goes to a third, you know that you kind of have that taken care of. And then we'll hit OK. And then that goes through. So in here you see this record no longer overwrote our phone information, which is key. And we have that third column that captures some of this middle names. So with this, we want to know that this G column is now going to be parent 2 first name. H is going to be parent 2 last name. And then we can actually go through and start looking at some of this data to see what gets carried over. Really, to be the things that we're going to focus on are it's going to be on this column. So we will do a filter on this column to see any data that's not empty, because really every column should be empty in this one. That means there was a middle initial. So we see right here this column is not empty, and that's because this person has a middle name, St. Peter. So I think what's really should happen here is that this should be broken out, and we can do one of two things. We can say that is not Peter, or, and that can capture it right there. This is another middle name, which, as we mentioned before, it's not needed. And it's the same scenario here. So middle initials coming in is not needed or required by SchoolCollabo. So we can go through and override these to just make sure that we have the appropriate last name for these individuals. And we'll go through these records, and you can see how quickly we can format that. And then we have our last information here. And once you do that, we'll come back and we'll change our filter. Come back in here and remove the filter so we can see all of our records. And now we do not care about this column anymore because we've gone through and processed all those records, so we can delete it. So now we have parent first name, parent last name. This parent guardian information we can go ahead and delete. And now, as you can see, we've broken out our records into parent 1 first name, parent 1 last name, parent 2 first name, parent 2 last name, and we have that information in a format that SchoolCollabo needs to upload the parent information. Of course, we can go in afterwards and then assign the appropriate phone numbers to the appropriate parents. But, you know, this is just a quick and easy way to split out your parent information if it comes to you in one field. I hope this was helpful. Thank you.